Today's episode is brought to you by the U.S. Bank Altitude Connect Visa Signature Card. To learn more, visit usbank.com/altitudeconnect. Now, let's get into the show.
He kind of said in his thick, hairy accent, he said, well, one thing I'll tell you now, don't spend too much of your life in offices because nothing interesting ever happens in an office. And that was it. That was his advice for living. So I've tried to live by that. I always tell this to people who are planning trips to Ireland, leave a day for doing nothing and be open to just meeting people and talking to people, because Ireland has its beautiful scenery and it's great things to do. But the real treasure of Ireland to me is the people, the people you get to talk to. And
those were a couple clips from my interview today with National Geographic tour leader and author Jack Kavanagh. He recently published a bit of a love letter to his home country of Ireland in the form of a new book. It's called Always Ireland, an Insider's Tour of the Emerald Isle. Of course, we're going to discuss that today. You're going to get the scoop on all things Ireland, from culture to where to find the best traditional music, a few incredible and less touristed road trips to consider taking, why chatting and daydreaming are Ireland's two unofficial pastimes, some festivals worth a visit. I'm going to share one of my personal favorite travel moments, which happened to me in Ireland, and where to find some of the best nature in Ireland, and plenty more, all happening today in the interview segment. Plus, I want to share something I had no idea Google could do, or did do, I should say. This cracked me up. I'm wondering if you knew this. I'll share a bit about that, and a shout out to a listener of this show who decided not to settle. I love her mindset about balancing what you want in daily life with travel. All that's happening in this episode right now. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, what's up? It's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. I must say that today's destination, Ireland, is one of my favorite places to go. I actually mentioned this during the interview. It, for some reason, feels like home to me. It feels like a bit of a home. I'm drawn to it. Something about the music, the culture, the people, the nature. I love it. And I'm dying to get back. It's been a few years since I've been in Ireland, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of mentally take us all there. And of course, anytime you talk to an Irish person, they do tend to be able to spin a good yarn. And Jack Kavanagh, our guest today, certainly no exception to that. He shares a lot about what he loves about his homeland. And as a guide for National Geographic and author, he's able to be a representative of that culture and kind of be that conduit between us as travelers and the people and the place and the earth and the nature that is Ireland. So I'm really excited to bring you this conversation. Listen, I love a good Irish accent as well. I mean, someone tells a story with an Irish accent, it just draws me in a little more. I don't know why. Must be, I don't know if it's a me thing or just a traveler thing. Anyway, before we dive in, I had to share this. I thought it was hilarious. I Googled Ireland to just see, all right, let me just type in Ireland and see what comes up. I'm sure there's going to be like billions of things, but let's just, for fun, see what we find. And believe it or not, on the right side, oftentimes when you Google something, you'll find Google reviews. Well, who knew that Google reviews are enabled for entire countries? How do you review a whole country? I was shocked to see there are almost 10,000 reviews for just Ireland as a country. So, of course, I had to go in and read some of the one-star reviews for you. Just a couple highlights here. Here's a one-star review from Celeste O'Connell. Sounds very Irish. Maybe she's a local. She said, I was bitten by a sheep in Ireland. I repeat, an actual sheep bit me with its teeth. I am not sure if I am now Sheep Spider-Man, but it turns out that I am. I will give you all updates on my powers. Okay. Here's another one from Jack, who says he's a French teacher. Not very good weather and not too interesting. Too misspelled. And here's another one that just says nice. 1-star review. I don't know. I mean, what? Who is taking the time to leave a 1-star review for the country of Ireland? Anyway, I'm giving it 5 stars. And if you've never been, or you've been many times, I think you're going to love this episode for all the recommendations, the culture, and a lot of the points we hit on with author Jack Kavanagh. I'll read a little bit about Jack before we dive into the interview segment from his About the Author section of this book, Always Ireland, the Insider's Tour of the Emerald Isle. Jack has worked as an editor for National Geographic International Editions, which publishes books, magazines, and other media in more than 35 languages. He was also the senior editor for National Geographic Books, where he wrote and edited guidebooks on Ireland, Cuba, New York, Japan, and other destinations. Kavanagh is also the author of National Geographic Complete National Parks of Europe. He is currently working on a book about the UNESCO World Heritage Sites to be published by Nat Geo as well. So it's got a lot of expertise as a traveler, as a journalist, as a writer, as a guide for National Geographic Expeditions. I think you're going to enjoy hearing his stories about Ireland. And without further ado, let's get into them. Stick around on the back end. I'm going to give a shout out to a listener. I'll leave you with a great James Joyce quote and a bit of a challenge based on some of the discussion points in the interview segment. Let's get into it, shall we? I'll see you on the other side, my friend.
I did a film with Nat Geo in Tokyo, of all places. So I did a little bit of TV work, but I prefer words, to be honest with you. You know, I'm not a visual guy.
We are going to talk about words today. I should officially welcome Jack Kavanagh to the Zero to Travel podcast. Welcome, my friend. I'm loving your book, Always Ireland, an insider's tour of the Emerald Isle, which we're going to get into all things Ireland today. I couldn't believe it when I was reading your author bio in the book and saw that you split time between Philadelphia and Ireland. I'm a Philly guy. I'm from outside of Philly. And I've been to Ireland. I mean, you can see I've got like my Irish, you could call it my Irish uniform on today. I got my hat from Ireland. I've got a green shirt. I got jeans on. I was looking through your book and I saw a picture of somebody. I'm like, hey, I'm dressed exactly like that guy. So this is.
Well, yeah, I'm I suppose a split personality. Really, I'm a Gemini, you know. So it's interesting, Jason. I've spent almost half my life in Philadelphia now, and the other half in Dublin. So I don't really know who I am anymore. No, it's nice to have a foot in both camps, and it's nice to be able to go home and to see Ireland as an outsider as well as somebody who's grown up there. There's a nice phrase I read, having the insight of an outsider, you know, which is very true. You see things from a fresh perspective. You see things from. I take tours around Ireland with National Geographic Expeditions. I lead those. And it's lovely to see my own country from a perspective of people who are visiting for the first time, and to be showing them around and to be noticing what they notice about it. You know, to be seeing all the good things that you probably take for granted. You know, like anywhere.
In some ways, it's like, yeah, I'm thinking about just being around my kids and the things that they notice. I mean, you get a similar version of that as a traveler. Yeah. I guess
it's seeing things for the first time, seeing things with new eyes. It's great. It's a great way for me to rediscover things in Ireland as well, and to share them, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, I had to spend a good chunk of my life in Philadelphia because I was born there, but I mean, you're doing it by choice. What are you doing?
Well, that's a whole other podcast, Jason. It's a long story, but basically, I came over. I was a freelance writer, writing mainly sports in the 1990s, and I came over for the 1994 World Cup. The paper that I was working for was just on the verge of closing down, so I found a job writing in Philadelphia, and I just decided, well, what have I got to lose? I'll give it a year, and here I am, 27 years later. I'm married to a lovely woman who was born in Philadelphia, so we've settled here. But I go back to Ireland all the time. So as I say, I have a foot in both camps.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to me being from the area. And I mean, well, you mentioned sports. What do you think about the Philadelphia sports fans?
Oh well, we've had a great year. We got to I think it's 4 finals, isn't it? The soccer team got to the final, got beaten. The Phillies got to the World Series, got beaten. The Eagles just got beaten the other week. So it's nice and true to form for Philly, And where I come from, we have a thing called moral victories. The Irish soccer team used to have a lot of moral victories. A moral victory would be a 1-1 draw against England, for example. But so I can really relate to it. But I'll tell you a funny story about it. I love Philadelphia. I love the fact that the streets clear. When the Eagles are playing and you can hear all the shouts from inside the rooms and everything. It's wonderful. It reminds me of Dublin during the World Cup. When I came over here first, as I say, I was a freelance writer, and I had a column in a magazine called In Dublin, entertainment magazine. So I went looking for all the great boxing heroes of Philadelphia, because as you know, it's a real fight town, Philly, and it's had so many world champions that I was actually very excited to be stepping into this legendary place. But the thing is, I couldn't find them. There was no kind of boxing Hall of Fame, or there was no big gym with all the photos or anything like that. So I went up to Joe Frazier's gym to interview him, and I talked to his son Marvin, and there was a huge big photo of him knocking out Ali on the wall and all that. But I kind of foolishly asked Marvin where all the statues were, And I soon discovered, of course, that the only statue in this legendary boxing town is of a fictional character, Hollywood fiction, So that kind of says a lot about Philly. It's kind of funny. It's a fun town. I love living here,
Yeah. Do you? I mean,
yeah. It's got its own quirkiness. It's between New York and DC, but it's kind of. It doesn't have the pretensions of either, shall we say? It's a good fun town to be in. I worked in DC for years for National Geographic as well, so I've seen that side of the capital as well, which I liked.
Yeah. Who's more cynical, the Irish or the Philadelphians?
Well, they both have a kind of dark side, which I kind of like. As I say, with the sports, you just expect the worst here, and you expect the call to go against you, which, as we saw with the Eagles the other week, it did, So there's a certain fatalism here that I can really relate to, with the Irish. You're from Bucks County, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, is it the fatalism that makes you feel a little bit at home in Philly?
A little bit, yeah, but it's also just kind of a work-a-day town. It's, as I say, it's kind of unpretentious, and it's rough around the edges, which I kind of like. It's I was here for a few years, then I moved to DC, but I came back here. When I got married, we decided to settle here. There's just something I liked about it. I feel at home in Philadelphia the same way as I'd feel at home in Dublin,
Really? That's a nice place to get to being somebody that lives in a foreign country as well. I live in Norway and I'm from the States. So being outside of the homeland, it's nice when you start to get that feeling. It took a little while for me. I don't know how it was for you, but where I came back to Norway and I felt like I could take that breath and be like, oh, I'm home.
Exactly. Yeah.
Didn't feel like that for a while.
Yeah. How long have you been in Oslo, Jesse?
Now it's been about 7 or 8 years, something like that. I'm a citizen now, but it took a little while to feel like home.
Yeah, there is that moment when you get off the plane in your adopted homeland and you realize something's changed, because you feel like, okay, now I'm back home, And it works the other way as well. You kind of you do start to become a visitor in your own homeland, which that was starting to happen after 10 years with me, but. What was lovely about getting the expeditions job was that, it brought me back more regularly, and I kind of felt a part of it. And, I'm thinking about buying a house over there now. So that's probably where we'll end up, when we retire. But as I say, it's nice to have the two places, you know.
When you say the expeditions job, you're referring to your work as a tour guide for Nat Geo Expeditions, doing the. I have the
That's
name.
right. Yes, it's a trip called Tales and Treasures of the Emerald Isle. I'm not so much a guide. There's a professional guide on it who works full time in Ireland, but I'm just the they call me the expert. But I give a few lectures, a few presentations, and I just talk people around. It's an ideal job. It's lovely. You're basically a host in your own country, which is really lovely. As I say, it's nice just to show people around. To all the places and to kind of welcome them. I often say, America's been great to me. It's given me a career. It's given me my wife and a whole new life. So it's kind of nice to give back to them, to bring Americans over to Ireland and give something in return.
Yeah, it sounds fulfilling, and I guess in that way you're a bit of a conduit to the culture. With a group like that, where you're really introducing them to some of the concepts. Well, I'm gonna ask you about culture and destinations. We're into a whole bunch of stuff. Well, you studied English literature and philosophy in Dublin, and those two majors, I would say, and then like liberal arts are probably the three ones where people like, oh, that's a recipe for just not having a job ever. Yet, yet you've carved out this amazing career for yourself. I'd love to hear your advice.
When you grow up in Ireland, in Dublin particularly, everyone's a writer of English literature, in a Dublin style or whatever. As you know, the Irish reinvented English literature, and I think Joyce said, Ireland's revenge on England was to colonize its language. So that's true. Everyone's a poet in Dublin and in Ireland. We even have the president is now a poet as well. So there's that. And then, of course, if you go out to the pubs in Dublin, everyone's a philosopher as well, So it was kind of just a natural progression, But it was, it gave me a nice grounding in journalism and in writing. I wanted to be a writer, I always, as I said, I'm a words guy rather than a visual guy. So it was lovely to do the book because I got to put into words all the things that make Ireland special to me, and I got to travel around Ireland and a great excuse to knock on everyone's door and talk to them. And I people are kind of surprised when they open the book because I think a lot of people with National Geographic, they're expecting a travel guide. Whereas this is more of what I would call a kind of aspirational travel book. I think the days of travel guides in books are gone because, you can keep stuff up to date on a web. You can get a better map on a web, and you can see if you get a restaurant booking or whatever on the web much easier than looking in a book, obviously. So I like to think that this is like an aspirational travel guide, as I call it a dreamer's guide to Ireland, It's a book that you can buy before you go, 6 months before you go, whatever, and kind of just dip into prior to going and read a bit about the history, the culture, the background, the food, whatever you're into, the music, off the beaten path places, and you can say, oh yeah, I'd like to do that, or we should do that, or it's a kind of recipe for daydreaming. And I have a page in the book where I pay tribute to a guy I really admired growing up, a writer in Dublin whose name was Con Houlihan. He's a Kerryman, and Con Houlihan worked for the Irish press during the short time that I worked there. He was the main sports writer, but to say he was a sports writer again is really underserving him, because he was more of a philosopher, and he would give like English literature lectures within a column. He'd write about anything. He just wrote about life, under the guise of sports, and it was great stuff. But he, so he kind of gave me some great advice as to what you're saying there, Jason. He took me for a pint at 10 o'clock in the morning, my first week on the job, and kind of sat me down and asked me who I was first of all, and what my story was, and what I was doing in the Irish press, blah blah blah. And his great advice to me, which is, it's in the book, but I'll share it with your listeners now anyway. He kind of said in his Take Care Reactions, he said, well, one thing I'll tell you now, don't spend too much of your life in offices, because nothing interesting ever happens in an office. And that was it. That was his advice for living. So I've tried to live by that. I'm kind of getting away with it slowly but surely, like, by writing books like this, which is it's great fun, But it's as I say, it's like a dreamer's guide to Ireland rather than a travel guide or whatever. There are some practical things in it, but it's mainly about how you see Ireland and how you approach Ireland, kind of psychically, mentally, and emotionally.
Yeah, I feel like you're psychically reading some of my interview preparation notes here, because I was going to bring up Colin Houlihan and that exact quote, because I think if you're going to lean on a quote for a life, that's not a bad one, right?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. The other great quote, and I think I put it in that piece on him, but his great adage was, "Daydreaming is good for you." He believed in daydreaming. Like, if you don't daydream, you're not alive, because you're not thinking of what you really want to do. You're thinking of the work I have to get done, or bills I have to pay, or whatever. So and I think daydreaming is a very Irish thing. It's very creative. The Irish are kind of connected to the creative arts, and there's a lot of daydreaming goes on in Ireland, and it's good fun. And I always tell this to people who are planning trips to Ireland. Leave a day for doing nothing, and be open to just meeting people and talking to people, because Ireland has its beautiful scenery and its great things to do, but the real treasure of Ireland to me is the people. The people you get to talk to, and Irish people love to talk, as I'm sure you know. But so you should consider that as being one of the real gems of Ireland, is having time to talk and sit and relax, or being open to meeting people.
Yeah, well, this was something you said in the book. You said Ireland's two unofficial pastimes, chatting and daydreaming. So I just love that advice. If you're going to spend a day doing nothing, well, maybe you can have one or two to-dos, right? Chatting and daydreaming.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a great way to spend a day in Ireland, especially.
Yeah.
It's such a special place.
Yeah.
It's strange, but I feel at home in Ireland when I have gotten the chance to visit 2 times, and I don't know why. It just feels right. I thank you for sharing everything that you shared about the book and how it's structured as sort of a guidebook, because I was going to mention that. I feel like this is sort of like a new age guidebook, and in the sense that it's not a guidebook. It's just giving you some recommendations, but there's like no prices. There's no a traditional guidebook type of things. You get more of like the stories and the history, but in a really cool way. So I've been really enjoying it. And, as a lover of Ireland, thank you for that. Thanks for sending it over.
The one thing that we do kind of, that I did steal from, I used to edit guidebooks for Nat Geo. The one thing I thought I would keep in that is drives. Because you can always drive somewhere, and you'd mentioned to me in an email about pre-planning and what should you tell people who are pre-planning trips around Ireland. And that's the one thing I would say that you can plan. There's a few good drives. First of all, I think if at all possible, if you can, hire a car in Ireland, because it's such an easy place to drive. Now, yeah, we drive on the left, which doesn't suit Americans, but you get used to it, and it's not like driving around Philadelphia or 95 or whatever. The roads are there's less traffic.
If you don't get used to it, you just die. It's no big deal.
but we do have actually great roads. Since I left, the roads got really good. But they're very well maintained. They're very easy to use. The signs are all in English, which helps, of course, and in Gaelic as well. But it's such an easy place to get around. Like, I'm planning a trip with a guy from Ohio for April, and we're just going to base ourselves in Bray, which is in County Wicklow, my hometown. But we're planning all these day trips, and you can get anywhere in Ireland within a day, because the highways are good. But my other advice for pre-planners is, take the highways to get there, to get to somewhere like Connemara, and then go off on the byways. because that's where you'll really you'll meet a lot of people, and they're beautiful anyway. Like the hedgerows are beautiful, but as I say, Irish people love to talk, and you can just stop and talk to somebody who's leaning over a fence, and you'll have a good half an hour's entertainment, and you'll find out about the locality. And a lot of people will have the time for that, you know. I think using GPS in Ireland is kind of missing the point, you know. I think you're eliminating half the entertainment of Ireland if you don't stop and ask directions and chat with people. And you know, people will be interested in you as well, where you're from and all that, because as you know, there's 20 million Irish people abroad, so. You know, if you say, "Oh yeah, I'm from Bucks County," they'll say, "Oh yeah, no, guy down the road. He's from Meath, but he's over there these last 20 years or whatever." There's Irish people everywhere, and they do love to talk, and they're very interested in people from outside. You know, and the other thing is the people you meet on the road are great. I have an Instagram page, and I was writing the other day about a woman called Helen Riley, and Helen Riley is one of these people we just met on one of the back roads. Helen Riley and her people are travelers. They're part of the traveling communities, which are, you know, they're not in settled houses. They just go around the country. They're
nomads.
Nomads, exactly, yeah. Modern day nomads. But these have been in Ireland for hundreds of years, if not thousands, the traveling community. And Helen Riley was just at the side of the road in Waterford. She'd stopped, unhitched the horse from her very old traditional wooden caravan so that the horse could graze. And we got chatting to her, and I've known her ever since these last 4 years. So I put her story in the book with the story of the travellers, you know. But that's the kind of thing that happens if you have a car in Ireland. It's lovely. You just stop, you meet, you chat to people, you learn, you know, you learn so much about Ireland. Like I've learned huge amounts of Ireland from just doing that in the last few years, you know?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned them having the time to talk. Is it that they have the time to talk, or they're willing to make the time to talk?
It's a bit of both, because, you know, I don't want to paint a kind of exile's romantic view, over-romanticized view of Ireland here, because, you know, I realize it's a modern country, and it's got its problems and it's got its challenges, and like everywhere else, you know, we all have to make a living, and people are busy. But I think you're right. I mean, it's that they do make the time to talk, and I think it's that they appreciate the fact that you want to talk. They'll give you the time to talk, you know. And they also like talking. They like sharing things, you know. They like stories. Irish people are great storytellers.
Why? Why is that? Why are they great storytellers?
I suppose it's just the way history shaped us, you know. If you think of 300 years ago or 400 years ago, there was no TV, there was no radio, so people would just sit around a fire and telling stories to pass the time, you know. But it's also, I think it's to do with the Gaelic language as well. It's a very kind of poetic language, lyrical language. So there's a way of telling stories that's particularly good in Ireland, that's very very dramatic. A guy in the book, actually, very interestingly, he told me he's a Shanachie himself, which means an ancient storyteller. He's in that tradition. He's a musician that I talked to down in Kerry, Thomas O'Sullivan. Great guy, great, very eloquent guy. Such a good storyteller that we actually had to give him. He's the only person in the book with 2 pages because he was so expansive, you know. But he was compared storytelling in Ireland to jazz, which I thought was very interesting. And he said, like, you're going to have your basic riff, you know, like you have the bones of the story. You know, and even if somebody who's heard it before, like they'll be telling the same stories over and over again in the country, but they'll just have new twists on it. You know, they'll add a little bit to make it more interesting, or they'll change it slightly. You know, bring in a new character, or kind of put the blame for a crime on somebody else, and off it goes, and it's a whole new thing. And the Irish are very good at reinventing. You know what I mean? They're very imaginative race. That's what I find from being outside there now. They like that kind of thing of reinventing themselves. You know, and it's been in touch with what would you call it, the higher ground, the creative spirit. I'll give you an example. Actually, I was online yesterday, and something about U2 popped up, So they have a new film and they have a new album called Songs of Surrender. So, and basically what they've just redone their whole catalogue, or their back catalogue, a lot of it anyway. A lot of these songs that he talked about in his recent biography, Bono, But, they've stripped them down, and they've kind of, I haven't listened to it, but what they're saying is they've rewritten the songs as if they were written today rather than, say, in the 1980s or whatever, with the new technology and with the new voice and all that. So I know a lot of people do that, but it's a typically Irish thing to do, is to keep reinventing yourself. We had to do it because we had to go abroad as well. The part of the book, from my own experience, that I tried to squeeze into the story of Ireland was the untold story of Ireland, which is the exile story. So there's 20 million Irish people abroad. So they all have to reinvent themselves constantly, So that's part of being Irish, is that thing of going abroad, starting again, start over, start again. And then maybe some of them come back and have to, do it all again. As you can relate to that, Jason, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to talk destinations. We're going to do it through a little game I'm calling Where to Go For ... Where to go for ... So where do we go for nature? You can give us like one or two of your favorite spots.
Nature. Well, my own favorite place to go for nature would be Glendalough, which is a 6th century monastic ruins, but it's where it's set. It's so beautiful. It's set in Glendalough, means the glen of two lakes in Irish. So it's in County Wicklow. It's very close to Dublin. It's very close to Bray, where I'm from. So when I was growing up, we would cycle down there. It's about an hour's cycle, but it's just really, really beautiful place. Very, very peaceful. I'm not a religious person, but I do kind of feel there's some kind of psychic energy about Glendalough that's very calming to me. And anytime if I have trouble in my life, or if I need to work something out, I go just on a long, long hike in Glendalough, because it's so beautiful. There's woods, there's two big, steep mountains going into the glen. Just an amazing place to walk through. You can actually walk all the way from practically Dublin. If you take the Wicklow Way, which is a trail, it would take a couple of days probably, but you can walk right into Glendalough. And as I say, the monastic settlement, St. Kevin's monastic settlement, it's still got its round tower, and it's got ruins of, I suppose, what was a village at one point. But it just feels very, there's something about it, like you realize that you're walking into real Irish history there, because that would be the place where, they wrote the books, they kept the Bible alive during the Dark Ages, and they would be attacked by Vikings and that. So it's a very special place, for me. That's where I would go for nature. One of the things I do with the guests on the expeditions tours is I read them a lot of poetry, because Ireland's big on poetry. And there's a beautiful poem called St. Kevin and the Blackbird. So if your listeners want to look up that's about St. Kevin, who founded the monastery there in Glendalough, and how he kind of becomes part of nature. And that's what I feel about going to Glendalough. You lose yourself, because the nature is so beautiful, that you kind of see your own place in the world. It's not that important, your troubles aren't that important. So that'd be my place to go for nature anyway. One of many in Ireland, I should say. The other book that I wrote was the National Parks of Europe, and so I got to see all the national parks of Ireland very well, and that was just there's lovely national parks. Glenveigh up in Donegal would be another national park worth seeing if you're into hiking and nature, and an absolutely beautiful place.
That doesn't sound like a bad gig. You don't got a bad gig going on, do you, Jack?
I can't complain. Yeah, I can't complain.
I mean, I hadn't thought about, maybe the best nature is just the nature that kind of makes us forget about ourselves. So as you mentioned, I think that's a really
I mean, Norway is a wonderland for that, isn't it? It's just beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful
it really is. All right, where should we go for music? I'm a huge fan of the whole music scene in Ireland, the trad, the whole. I mean, if you want to describe kind of the culture around music a bit. I know it runs deep. Of course, when you go out to a pub and you hear people playing, or you see the spontaneity and like these jams, and I can start connecting it to like, this is the foundation of bluegrass. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and then you're there in the dark wood, and I mean, I'm getting chills just talking about it, man. Where should we go for music? And you could talk a little bit about music in Ireland and the importance of it to the country.
Well, music is absolutely huge in Ireland. I think Ireland would just grind to a halt if you took out, if music was banned tomorrow, which it was under the penal laws in the 1700s. So imagine the seismic shock of saying you can't play your music. And of course, like everything else, it goes underground. So you have people playing in bushes and things like that. So I do tell that story to my guests, that a lot of Irish culture and music, it became very subversive. You know what I mean? It's a very subversive thing, the arts in Ireland. It's a way of challenging the authorities, a lot of the time, which is interesting. But I just love going home. One of the reasons I love going home is because I go out to see live music. So I usually end up in Dublin, like. Bray is just 12 miles from Dublin, my hometown. So I have a friend, a great music goer called Keith Brittle in Ireland, and I tell him I'm coming home, and he says, "Oh, well, here's what's going on that week." So we go and see a gig or whatever. So, I've seen so many gigs in Dublin down the years. The current darlings of the Dublin scene, and I might be a bit out of date here now with this, but the last band that I really was blown away by are a band called Fontaines DC. They're kind of a post-punk band, but I like them because they actually sing in Dublin accents, which I think is great. They don't try to hide it. But it's so varied what you can hear in Dublin and what you can hear around the country. Like that's the thing about Ireland. Irish people are very open to music of all types. It's very eclectic country musically. Partly because we're an island, so we've always traditionally welcomed outsiders in. We're very good at absorbing, the outside influences and melding them in. And of course, the other thing, as you mentioned there, is that we've gone abroad. We've had to go emigrate. A lot of us, and we bring our music with us. So from the 1840s or whatever, when the famine times, right back to the Scots-Irish before that, they would always bring the fiddles with them. So, this is how you ended up with great fiddle players in West Virginia or whatever like that. They all settled there, and it evolved, and it became bluegrass, and it became country and western, I suppose, So the people I bring around Ireland are always amazed how much we love country music, country and western music. But it's quite natural because, in a way, we invented it, or at least we invented the roots of it years ago, and it went to, as I say, West Virginia, and then Nashville and Tennessee and all these places. So it kind of evolved into an American roots thing. So one of the interesting quotes I came across when I was writing the book was. The chieftains, Paddy Maloney of the Chieftains, who died there, I think, late last year. Paddy Maloney said that he felt instantly at home when he first went to Nashville, and that makes perfect sense because the music was all music he would have heard growing up, and it was very familiar to him, So that's what I love about Ireland is you can go out and you don't know what you're going to get. You could be in a pub, like it'd be quite a normal thing to be in a pub somewhere in, say, in Kerry or Clare or something like that. And if you go in at 6 o'clock, there'd be a session going, and a session, as is it's just kind of impromptu jam session where anyone with a guitar shows up. There's a fiddle player, there might be a baritone player with a drum, the goatskin handheld drum, and it would they'd be playing jigs and reels for an hour or so, and then at 8 o'clock you might have a country and western singer coming in singing Johnny Cash songs and that kind of thing, and then you might have a rock and roll band on at 10 o'clock, followed by a disco after. Like it's very, very eclectic. It's Irish people are very flexible. They're very adaptive um, people, and they do like, they like experimentation. As I said to Jason, it's like talking to Bono there. Like Bono wrote one of my favorite Bono songs. He wrote for Willie Nelson. Song called "Slow Dancing." It's very, very. It's a country waltz, basically, is what it is. He wrote another one for Frank Sinatra, kind of lounge lizard song. He did that one with Pavarotti, opera, melded the opera into it. This is a good example of like they just Irish people like experiment, and they don't like to be put in a box. You're a country and western singer, you're a this, you're a that. So anything goes in Ireland, and the music scene is very, very like that. It's we're kind of open to anything. I'll tell you a funny story actually as you're sitting in Oslo there. So a few years ago, I was on the Nat Geo Expeditions cruise up to Svalbard, and absolutely amazing trip, like a trip of a lifetime for me, because I've always wanted to see Norway. But we were up way up north. I think it was a very, very remote little place where you have all these tiny little villages that are snowed in for the winter. Somewhere like towards Tromsø, is that right? I can't really remember where it was, but anyway, the captain made an announcement that there was going to be a folk band being tendered onto the ship for the evening's entertainment. So I got very excited about this because I love music. I thought, great, we'll hear a bit of Norwegian folk music. This should be really interesting, But they introduced themselves as the Gobliners, and I said, "What, the Gobliners?" They were a Dubliners tribute band. So we were sitting there on this boat, like on a fjord in Norway, listening to Dubliner songs, which was lovely. It was great, but I got a chuckle out of it.
You tried to get away, and the Irish still followed you around.
It kind of shows you the influence that Irish music has, or particularly traditional Irish or folk music has. So it was kind of funny, but it's like music. I should say though, to answer your question, go to County Clare, to a little town called Doolin in County Clare, which is basically the home of the spiritual home of Irish music. There are 4 pubs. At least the last time I was there, which was pre-COVID, there was 4 pubs in Doolin, and they all tried to outdo each other by having the best musical session. I'm trying to remember the name. There's McGann's, there's McDermott's, there's O'Connor's, and Fitzpatrick's, and they're all great pubs. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter which one you go to. Like you'll probably end up staying 4 nights there because you want to get around them all, and if you're a player yourself, if you have a guitar with you or a tin whistle or whatever, you can join in. If you're respectful about it, you ask them to sit in on the session, and it's a lovely experience. As you know, you've probably seen a few sessions. It's a very spontaneous thing, which is wonderful. It's great entertainment, really great entertainment.
I didn't know, as you called it, the spiritual heart of Irish music, because I spent a couple nights in Doolin on my first trip to Ireland back in the late 90s, dating myself here. I remember it was one of those magical moments on a trip. I had a couple. One was just going in for a pint and somebody coming in and then just singing like a cappella, some incredible old Irish ballad. I was like, what is happening here? This is magical. The next day I walked to the Cliffs of Moher, which is about, I don't know how many kilometers it is from.
Yeah, it'd be about 10, 15.
I thought, okay, I'm just going to walk.
Yeah.
I'm just bringing this up because the Irish people are so sweet. This woman pulls over. She's by herself. And she just offers me a ride. Now I'm like a dirty backpacker. I'm not even hitchhiking. I don't have the thumb out or anything.
Yeah,
she just offers me a ride. I said, well, I just came to walk because I wanted to get some air. She's like, well, I'll drive you and I'll show you this shortcut and you can walk along. And I said, okay, cool. So she dropped me off and then I couldn't find the shortcut and it didn't work. And then she's like, I wish I could take you all the way, but I have to go to my friend's, like, whatever it was, something. So I was like, couldn't find the shortcut, came back to the road. And then like 30 minutes later, she comes driving back. She's like, "Oh, my friend's thing was canceled, so I drove back to get you to drive you the rest of the way." I'm like, "What? You don't even know me. This is insane."
As I say, that's the kind of people you meet in Ireland. Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. If you'd rather be jetting off on vacation right now, listen up. Travel lovers, meet the US Bank Altitude Connect Visa Signature Card. With this credit card, you'll get 4 times points on travel, including gas and EV stations, and 5 times points on prepaid hotels and car rentals when you book directly through the Altitude Rewards Center. And no matter where in the world you are, you'll get 2 times points on groceries, dining, and streaming with a $30 annual credit for streaming services too. Visit usbank.com/altitudeconnect to apply and learn how you can earn 50,000 bonus points. You deserve a credit card with more and more travel rewards. Apply to become an Altitude Connect card holder at usbank.com/altitudeconnect. Limited time offer. The creditor and issuer of this card is US Bank National Association, pursuant to a license from Visa USA Inc. Some restrictions may apply. Now, back to the show. You mentioned great Irish drives, and that is one of the things that you bring up in the book, and getting a car, because that was another question I had. Should you get a car? Should you not get a car? You kind of mentioned, like it's good to have a car for some of these things, and you can do some of these road trips. And I just wanted to hear your favorite sort of 2 or 3 great Irish drives so people can take from this. And if they're planning a trip to Ireland, they can kind of dive in and look at some of the road trips they might want to take.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the first one, most people probably fly into Dublin, so I'd say do the Wicklow one, which is in the book, and that swings down to Glendalough, which you spoke about, but it's got it goes over a place called the Old Military Road. It's a beautiful scenic drive. County Wicklow is called the Garden of Ireland, because it's so scenic. It's mountain, beautiful mountain views. It goes over the Military Road. You'll see waterfalls. You'll see a very interesting place called the Guinness Lake, which is basically a very white sand beach in a valley with kind of black water, but it washes up to this place called Lugala, which the Guinness has owned. It was one of the Guinness's houses for years. It's been sold now. The man who owned it, the Guinness man, died I think 2 years ago, and they sold it. Interestingly, his brother is very famous as the guy who, do you know the Beatles song "A Day in the Life"?
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's Tara Brown, and it was Tara Brown's brother who owned this Lugala place. So you'll see all that history, but then you'll swing down to Glendalough, and you'll swing by a beautiful town called Avoca, the meeting of the waters, and then back through Roundwood and back to Bray. That's one of the great drives in Ireland. But one of there's so many good drives, Jason. One of my favorite drives, we do it on our expedition, is in County Kerry, and so everyone goes to Kerry and they stay in Killarney and they do the Ring of Kerry, which is a fantastic drive. But try the Dingle Peninsula, which is kind of up a little bit, and it's just a one-way trip right around the peninsula. It's very, very scenic Kerry cliff country, and you see the islands, the Blasket Islands out to sea, but its focal point is the town of Dingle. So you got to stop in Dingle, and there's a few places I should mention in Dingle. Like, first of all, if you want the quintessential Irish pub, rural Irish pub, stop in a place called Dick Mack's in Dingle, and it's on Green Street in Dingle, and it's the most traditional country pub you can imagine. It's got like an old style Irish bar on one side with snugs, cozy little snugs, which are kind of booths, you would call them in the States, where you can go in and have a kind of quiet pint and a chat with somebody. And on the other side, it's got a leather shop, and this used to be very common. The pub would double as like an undertaker's and this kind of thing in the country town, or a real estate place and that. And Dick Mack's is like this. It's like the perfect place for a quiet afternoon pint. But then, like, by night, all the musicians will come in. There'll be a session. traditional Irish music session. And as we say in Ireland, the crack is great. The crack is an Irish word, CRAIC. It's an Irish word, just means fun, conversation, devilment. We measure a good night out by the level of the crack. If the crack was great last night, you had a good night in the pub.
Not the same crack you get in Philadelphia.
No, it's a little bit different. Yeah, not the pharmaceutical type, but Dick Max is interesting because I was saying about over romanticizing Ireland and it being a modern country and all that. It's Ireland's very good at readopting it to the future as well. Like, it has a foot in the past, but also a foot in the future. So Dick Max now is kind of embracing the future. They've got a brew house now, and they're doing their own craft beers, and they've got they reinvented themselves during COVID, and they have a courtyard which has live music in the summer months, and they've got food trucks coming in. So it's a whole new kind of thing with, right beside the traditional Irish pub, which I really like that. As I said, the Irish are good at evolving and adapting. And Dick Max is so traditional that it's great to see that they're able to move with the times as well, while keeping the essence of what made it such a great spot. But I also want to mention while we're on Green Street in Dingle as part of your drive, a place I mentioned in the book as the 10 most musical square feet of real estate in Ireland, I call it, I think. And it's a little place called the Dingle Record Shop. And it's literally 10 square feet. And there's two people in there who run it. Maz O'Flaherty, who is one of the O'Flahertys, a very famous musical family in Kerry. And Brian Lee, I think, is the owner. But whichever one of them is behind the till, it's a great era of your time. If you like music, they just go in and they're huge aficionados of music and great conversationalists. They're great company, and you talk about music, whatever you're into, and various songs and all that. But Maz used to, she did this podcast with Irish musicians down the years. She gave it up a couple of years ago, but she put out a CD of all the compilation. And it's a great thing to have it on a drive around the Dingle Peninsula, a kind of introduction to Irish music, like all the eclectic types of it. Like there's sea shanties on it. There's Shan No singers, which is what you were talking about. The unaccompanied singer in the pub just stands up and there's a hush and nobody says a word, and it's kind of magical. And then there's traditional Irish, and I think there's a bit of choral music on it. It's a really lovely introduction to Irish music, and it's called Fare Thee Well. So ask for that, Fare Thee Well Sessions from the Shop, I think it's called. Great CD to bring home with you. I play it all the time here, Where else in Dingle? Paul Geeney's pub on Main Street in Dingle is worth a pint as well, because Paul Geeney is a famous Kerry footballer, Gaelic football, which is a different type to soccer or rugby. It's kind of a mix. It's our own national game. So Paul's won championships with Kerry. But he's got a brother who every now and again takes to the dance floor, and it's just something else to watch. He's amazing. He's a world champion Irish dancer. He's danced in Las Vegas, and I think he's danced in the White House and places like that. But he's just unbelievable. So if you catch him on a good day, you'll see. David is his name, David Geeney, doing his fancy footwork on the floor, and it's really special, and then as you leave the town, there's the Dingle Distillery, which is well worth dropping into. It's a relatively new place. I think it's opened the last 10 years, but they do Dingle gin and Dingle whiskey. And what makes it special is they've got their own, they use water from their own well, which is 800 feet deep. So it's a real taste of the kingdom. The kingdom is Kerry. We call Kerry the kingdom. But it's whatever they're doing it right. Like their whiskey is really, really beautiful. You probably know that whiskey is called Ishkabaha in Gaelic, which literally means the water of life. It was kind of started as a medicinal thing. way back in medieval times. So, which is why we say good health slaunch you. But it's using this local water, and it's the tour is great. It's worth going to. So the Dingle Distillery, and then there's the scenery after that just gets absolutely spectacular. So that'll be one of my all-time drives. The Beara Peninsula in Cork. That's a fantastic drive as well. It's south of the Ring of Kerry, so you could do the two. And if you're doing the Ring of Kerry, check out the Beara. The Beara is kind of the Irish secret that we don't like to tell, outsiders. That
now we're talking.
It's like the secret Ring of Kerry,
Yeah, okay.
But it's special. It's really lovely. There's lovely places to stop on that. I did it last year with my friend Keith Brittle and his wife, and it's a good time. It's really special,
Amazing. Thanks for that. You mentioned the modern Ireland, some of the changes. Have you noticed any changes in tourism, over-tourism concerns? Where's kind of the tourist industry in Ireland going, in your opinion?
Well, it like everywhere else, I suppose it screeched to a shuddering halt there in 2020. I was actually there, and I was writing a story on Galway when COVID hit. And I ended up, Galway is one of the most vibrant cities in Europe, in my opinion, because there's so many festivals going on all the time. It's just a great, great town. But I was there, I think, in March or April, and suddenly the whole place was just closed. And I had to write a story on on this lively place. So I reinvented the story in my Irish way and called it The Ghosts of Galway. And I got a local historian, and it was interesting. We just walked through this ghost town, and he was pointing out all the historical things that happened in Galway. But as I say, it's probably recuperating from that. And it's probably reinventing itself a lot, like the rest of the world in terms of restaurants and that. A lot of restaurants had to close, a lot of pubs had to close. The Irish pub, rural pub, has been struggling for years anyway, for a variety of reasons. It's just cheaper to drink at home, and people didn't want to be on the roads. And they banned smoking as well, and that didn't go down well in a lot of places, But so there's a kind of reinvention going on. So to answer your question, I don't really know where the future of tourism is in Ireland. I think it'll take a year or two to kind of, to head in that direction. But one thing I have noticed, and it's nice to see, is because it's kind of forward looking. The way we tell stories now in the 21st century is through films, movies. And there's an awful lot of movie-related tourism happening in Ireland, which I think is great. It's a really good way of kind of bringing, these ancient places into the 21st century and making them interesting to, I don't know, 20-year-olds who don't really care, who aren't that interested in going around monastic sites. I'll give you a great example. The Skellig Islands in County Kerry, which are these two they're basically just big rocks coming out of the Atlantic Ocean about a mile off Portmagee in Kerry. And they're sandstone rocks, but what makes them interesting is that they were a 6th century monastic settlement, and the monks built this incredible rock staircase. I call it the stairway to heaven, that you can climb up and go all the way to the top. So it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a fantastic place. It's one of those places you've got to see once in your lifetime. It's just absolutely unbelievable. But it's very hard to get to because the boats go out and the boats get cancelled all the time because the Atlantic weather is kind of wild and unpredictable. And it's also, it's not that it's dangerous, but you wouldn't want to send somebody who wasn't very firm of foot out there, an elderly person, because you have to climb 1,000 stairs of unprotected, you make a slip, you're finished. That's it, But you can go and you can just kind of drive past on the boats. The boats just do these drive-by kind of things, and it is worth seeing. But the reason I mentioned those in terms of the film industry is that they were used for 2 of the recent Star Wars movies, they were used as a Jedi training center in on this planet called Acto or something. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but anyway, I'm not a Star Wars buff. But if you are a Star Wars buff, this is huge. It's like, it's you've got to go there. So they've now the smart Kerry people have now initiated a festival for all these people who are interested in it called the May the 4th Festival, which happens on May the 4th, play on May the 4th, of course. So on May the 4th every year, Kerry's inundated with all these people in what's called Darth Vader gear, swishing the swords around and all that. And it's great fun, and it brings a lot of tourists in, and I can see that happening shortly with the two islands that were used for. Have you seen the Banshees of Inisherin, Jason?
Not yet. I want to see that.
Yeah, but you know the story. It's set on two of the offshore islands, or sorry, on an offshore island for which they used two of the real ones. So we did a story actually on it recently for in National Geographic Traveler. It's online if people want to look at that. They used the Aran Islands off Galway, which are really spectacular, and it's like all those stone walls and the Dunangus Fort on the cliff top, and it's a beautiful place to visit. You got to take a boat out there, but you go by the Cliffs of Moher, which you were talking about earlier. It's a lovely spot, and that's now going to become a destination because of the success of the Banshees, I think. And then the other place is Achill Island in County Mayo. That was the main setting for one of the characters' houses in it. It's on this little bay inlet on a beach. It's beautiful. But Achill is it's a great place. It's a real gem of Ireland's islands. By the way, we have a whole chapter in this on the islands, because again, I kind of felt I got overlooked a lot. But Achill is a fantastic place for families in particular. If you have kids, it's a really great place to bring them, because there's marvelous hiking trails, there's glorious beaches, there's stunning cliffs. It's a very kind of dramatic place because it's like right on the Atlantic. You get the winds coming in. They have a kite festival every year, which is great fun. All the kids take the kites out and fly them. And the fairground comes every summer, so it's very festive, and it's a magical place, a really, really lovely place, and it's got interesting things as well. Achill, like a deserted village, which was a famine era mountainside, and when the potato crop failed, everyone left to go fish in the sea, and it's just this kind of spooky, eerie, deserted village. It's got a lot of pirate folklore because of a woman called Grace O'Malley. Grace O'Malley was known as the Pirate Queen in Ireland in the 1500s. Just as kind of Gaelic Ireland was dying, the Elizabethans were pushing everyone west, and she was kind of the last holdout, and she would raid the ships in that, Grace O'Malley. And we actually, I caught up with a descendant of Grace O'Malley and interviewed her for the book. So her story's in the book. She's an Achill. She has a house on Achill now. She lives in London, but she's a descendant of the Pirate Queen. Her name is Annette O'Malley, lovely woman. But again, film will bring a lot of people in. The stories, the 21st century stories, if you like, that Ireland's telling now through film will hopefully attract a lot of people. This has been a common thing, since the Quiet Man in the 50s, the John Wayne film. There's the village of Cong in County Mayo is still attracting people who want to see where John Wayne kissed Maureen O'Hara, Maureen O'Sullivan, or whatever, all these years later. So it's good to see, but to answer your question, I don't really know where the future is, but it's picking up again. It seems to be it seems to be becoming as vibrant as it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, thanks for that. Last sort of destination question, and You could just give us one, but because you mentioned a couple of festivals already, but I was just wondering if you could share an amazing local festival that most travelers never see that we might want to put on a list if we're visiting Ireland.
There's so many. I'd have to think really, really long and hard about that. The best festival is the Fleadh Cheoil, which happens every year, and that's the traditional Irish festival. And the nice thing about the Fleadh Cheoil is that it moves around. It's a different destination every year. So the time I saw it was in Drogheda.
What's it called?
The Fleadh Cheoil. It's an Irish word for a festival of music. So Fleadh is Fleadh, Fleadh, and Cheoil, Ceoil. Fleadh Cheoil. So if you look up Fleadh Cheoil and find out where it is, in whenever you're going to be there, that's really the one to see. But of course, it mightn't coincide with your visit. There's also a great festival in Clonmel in County Tipperary, which you should check out. It's a street festival, and there's a busking festival down there, I believe, as well, which I haven't been to, but I'd like to. That's on my list of must-dos, the busking festival in Clonmel, County Tipperary. But the best thing to do is just whatever week you're over there, whatever 2 weeks, is just key in festivals and find out, or even better, just ask an Irish person where it'll be, because there's always something happening, particularly in the summer. There's always going to be a festival happening. And the nice thing is there's different types of festival, like Drogheda and the Boyne Valley has a harp festival. There's a big revival in harp playing, and you can go and you can sit in these chambers and listen to a very beautiful harpists play, 17th century O'Carolan song tunes and that kind of thing. So whatever type of music, you'll find it in Ireland. There's an opera festival in Wexford every year in October. Whatever it is, Ireland will fulfill that need, because, as I said, musically we're very, very open-minded, very eclectic.
Yeah. I haven't asked about food. I should just say 1 or 2 dishes we have to eat when we're in Ireland.
Oh, God. Well, it's interesting, actually, because when I left Ireland, this is a real insider secret, and I shouldn't say this in public, but I will. When I used to go to Galway in the 80s, you'd have to go on the back roads because the highway hadn't been built, and you'd stop in some town and you get an awful ham sandwich and a bit of cheese on it if you were lucky. Ireland was just a dreadful place for food, I have to say. But in the last 30 years, and we write about this in the book, there's been a revolution, and it's fantastic. Because what happened was all the chefs kind of went away to get trained in places like Paris and Stockholm and places like this, and they kind of realized that Ireland had the best produce, so why weren't we, putting our best foot forward? And they brought back all these ideas, and then they went into the traditional Irish foods that had kind of died a death, for 200 years, and they revived it all. So it's an amazing place to go now. The things you really should try are a good Irish stew if it's the winter. You can't beat a really good Irish stew made with lamb. In the summer, we've fantastic fish. We've absolutely beautiful fish. So go to Kinsale, which is the foodie capital of Ireland, and there's a restaurant called Fishy, but there's a ton of them. There's 20 good fish restaurants, and just sample the creations of the local chefs, because they're very inventive with the fish, and the fish is just absolutely fantastic. The first thing I do when I get off the plane, Jason, is and my sister hates me for this. She thinks I'm a Luddite. Is I go for fish and chips.
Yeah,
it's
I get it, man. I mean,
it's the one taste of Ireland that I can't get anywhere else.
I go for Mexican food when I get back to America.
There you go. Yeah,
a Mexican restaurant. I don't care where, how, on the way from the airport.
Yeah.
Pull over. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Get me in there. Yeah.
I get it. I think there is something about getting back to your home country and then just craving certain foods. So that was another reason why I asked about it. And
It's a real
you actually
thing, you know.
you have some recipes in the book, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool. I thought that's not your typical guidebook move. Put a few recipes in there. I
Yeah,
like it. I was like, I might have to try a couple of these. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it'd be fun just to throw in a few things and kind of relate them to the places and that, you know. Like my sister Helen O'Brien helped me with a lot. She's a fantastic cook. I'm a workaday cook at the best of times, but so a lot of them were kind of ideas that I got, and then she would knock them into shape. Like she has a Celtic coffee, which is big, and we give the story of that. It was invented by a barman down in County Clare who was working on one of the first transatlantic flights, dealing with customers coming in, and apparently the flight took off and had to be abandoned, and they all came back at 2 a.m. freezing. So he offered them hot coffee, and he thought, you know what, I'll just throw in some whiskey, and it took off from there with cream or whatever. But there's little stories about it like that. And the Irish stew that I gave, the beef stew at Guinness, was something that Con Houlihan, the sports writer guy I mentioned earlier, he used to cook that in his home at 3 a.m. because he was a farmer, and he always used to have to get up at 3 a.m. and he'd put it on and he'd eat it at 7 a.m, and that was his routine, and that kind of thing. So there's fun little stories, but they're Ireland's great for food. I've got to say it, and I never thought I'd say that when I was growing up, but it really has become a food destination, which is marvelous to see,
So Con was cooking at 3 a.m., writing at 7 a.m., and taking his rookie colleagues out for a pint at 10 a.m.
That's it. He lived in his own time. He was living in the Kerry time. I was living in Dublin time. I was just out of bed, and on my first Irish press shift, kind of trying to be good, and trying to impress people, and he was there here. We were going to my office next door in Mulligan's Pub, and next thing I had a pint in front of me. So but yeah, he used to cook the stew like at 3 a.m. and just leave it cook, and then he'd write this. He wrote these huge lines. He had to hold the back page of a spreadsheet, so there'd be like a 1,000-word essay. And as I say, it would be vaguely about sport, but it would meander into Beckett and history of the continent and blah blah blah, and on it would go, and then it would come back to sport at the end. It was very, very readable stuff. It was great. And then he would have his dinner, at 6 a.m, go and file his copy, and people like me would just have to check it, and of course be word perfect. You couldn't touch it; it was sacrosanct. It was Con Houlihan's thing. So, but and that was his day. He was done at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, and he would go off, to talk to barmen about who was going to win the FA Cup, or were Ireland going to qualify for the thing or whatever. So
he would get out of the office, right?
Exactly. Let's stick around the office, because nothing interesting ever happens in an office. Yeah.
There you go. We can finish on that. You want to share with everybody kind of, where they can find you, the book, or whatever you want to share?
The book you can get anywhere. You can get it through Disney. You can get it through Amazon. Just key in Always Ireland, Jack Kavanagh. And if you want a little sampler of the book, just go to the Instagram, which is at JK Global Text, And we just give little kind of samples of the book and photographs. As I say, I'll be going to Ireland in April, so I'll get busy on that. Hopefully, I'll have some fun new people to introduce that I'll come across on my travels in Ireland. But you can follow me on that and get a sample of the kind of things that are in the book. So thank you very much, Jason, for having me. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed our chat. It was great.
Yeah, I did as well. Thank you. And I have to ask you one last question. You mentioned chatting and daydreaming kind of being the two unofficial pastimes in Ireland. What are you chatting and daydreaming about these days?
What am I chatting and daydreaming about? Well, it's interesting. I've been chatting to two people in Amsterdam, and one of them is my nephew, and we were chatting about all kinds of things, mainly the new U2 album and to see what it'd be like, you know. U2 is to Dubliners what the Beatles were to Liverpool, you know. It's like we've been following them for so long that we're kind of interested. There's a lot of people outraged that they're going to have a residency in Las Vegas, but I kind of think it's the natural progression for them. They were always this huge band. I kind of feel like, you know, if they go out full on Elvis, you know, it'll kind of be appropriate somehow, you know. But the other thing I've been chatting to is a great friend of mine who I worked with in National Geographic. Actually, he was an intern in National Geographic when I worked in DC for international editions, and he's a great pal of mine called Kenny Ling, and Kenny Ling is from Malaysia, and our shared passion is football, soccer, you know. So we have been. We've been discussing the recent resurrection of Manchester United, you know, and it's Manchester United is a very Irish club, and this surprises people. They kind of say, "Why do you follow English football, English soccer so closely? You know, you're Irish or whatever." But we have our own Gaelic games in Ireland, which we love, and that's one great thing to do when you're in Ireland. You should try and get to a Gaelic game. It's amateur sport, but there could be 60,000 at a final or 80,000 at an All Ireland final. But we also keep a close eye on British clubs, because down the years a lot of people have gone across and played for them, you know, who are Irish. So it's Manchester United is a particularly closely followed club in Dublin, because of a guy called Bill Whelan. And Bill Whelan, unfortunately, was one of the Busby Babes, the famous team that crashed, the plane crash in Munich in 1958. So, you know, because we lost Liam Whelan in Munich, there's a special bond, you know, that Irish people feel that Manchester United is part of us, you know. Liverpool has that Irish connection as well, because there's so many Irish in Liverpool. But that's something that surprises a lot of my guests, how close the two cultures are. You know, we had an 800-year marriage of inconvenience, as I call it. You know, and the divorce was pretty bitter. But there's a lot of very tight bonds between the Brits and us. You know.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm chatting about these days.
Yeah, love it. You know, there's a big following here where you see it a lot in the news of Manchester City because of Arling Haaland.
Of course he's Norwegian.
He's Norwegian. He's the striker, so he's getting a lot of you know, they always show the highlights on anytime a Norwegian goes out in the world. You know how it is being from a small, because there's like a little over 5 million people in Norway, so if a Norwegian goes out and does something prominent in the world, it's just like
it's everywhere. It's
everywhere, man. Thanks for your time. You know, I will mention just quickly, because you know you love music, I do play in a rock band here, so if you can get us any gigs in Ireland, you know, we're there.
What's your band called?
Laundry House. I'll send you a link. So anyway, get us, you know, give us an excuse to come to Ireland, because we're looking to go on the road a little bit here with our little show. So
I'll tell you now, if you're interested, we're actually I'm putting together a launch for this book in Dublin on April the 14th. You know, so if you want to come on and play a few songs, you're more than welcome. You know.
Yeah, not a paid gig, I'm guessing.
No, it wouldn't be a huge gig. It wouldn't be sellout, like, you know. But it'd be a pub gig, you know. It'd be in Kennedy's pub, like that'd be fun.
That would be a dream. Listen, if I could play music in an Irish pub like that to a crowd, it would be like sort of a bucket list thing for me. It'd be a dream come true. I've always wanted to sit in on an Irish session and have somebody show me some things and just like be a part of it. It would be so cool.
What do you play, Jason? Are you a guitarist?
Yeah, I play a pretty crappy guitar. Yeah.
But that's the nice thing about sessions, is it doesn't matter what level you're at. You can join in Ireland, you know, as long as you know a few chords and as long as you're respectful of, you know, it's great. It's nice.
And I am respectful and I know a few chords. So there you go.
3 quarters of the truth, as they say. Yeah. That's all you need.
I fit the qualifications, I guess, there. So, thanks so much, Jack, and look forward to staying in touch, and good luck on your next trip over, and enjoy Philadelphia for me. Enjoy a cheesesteak for me.
I will. Thanks a million, Jason. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Okay.
Thank you once again to Jack Kavanagh for stopping by the show. Congratulations on the new book, and hope you enjoyed hearing his recommendations and some of his stories from his home country. Certainly gave me that vibe of wanting to jump on a plane over to Ireland. I'm going to do that in the next few years. I want to check out that roving music festival. Anyway, I want to give a quick shout out here. I'm going to leave you with a quote as well and a little challenge from today's interview to set you about your day. First, I got a follow-up email from Emily, a listener of this show. I'll read you a little bit of it. She said, I first reached out to you a little over a year ago, never reached back out because I was still in a fog and very uncertain about what the heck I was going to do with my life. I am now happily messaging you 13 months later to let you know that I did find a bit of a path. I'm only 25. I know it'll change 10 times over. However, I'm not excessively stressed and sad over not knowing anymore. So that's huge. Congratulations on that. She goes on to say she didn't decide to settle down in her hometown in Florida, and she will, quote, be pursuing my goal of working in wildlife conservation and traveling. I graduate from the University of South Florida in May with a bachelor's. I'm in a much better headspace than I was this time last year. I decided not to settle on the 5-year program, which would have been nice. I love my job, but it wasn't my calling. Traveling and working in conservation, that's my calling. My fiance and I have discussed adding more travel into our lives in the next few years to come. Once we've saved up a bit and are more on our feet, we've adopted 2 dogs together and have decided that that'll never hold us back, and we'd still travel, even if that meant bringing them. She goes on to say, you've helped me find some balance of desire and how to achieve my dreams, but also to find myself. Thanks for all you do. So thank you so very much for the kind words. And I just want to say congrats and just highlight that mindset there. I love that they decided to adopt the 2 dogs and bring them into their life. That was something they wanted to do. But the mindset that she puts forward there, that'll never hold us back. We'll still travel, even if that means bringing them. And I just wanted to highlight that quickly because I think that's pretty powerful. Just kind of bringing things into your life and you're saying that this isn't going to hold you back. I remember I avoided living somewhere for so long that when I finally did buy a place in Colorado, that was a big struggle for me when I was settling down from my nomad days, because my mindset was that any possession or anything like that was going to hold me back from traveling. So I had to change my mindset and say, hey, look, this isn't going to hold me back. I'm not going to let buying a condo stop me from traveling. And once I embraced that mindset, it just changed the way I approach things. I actually started looking for a place that could accommodate my travels. That meant, having a garage I could put my stuff in, having the capability to rent it out. It just changed the dynamic and just that mindset shift. I just wanted to highlight that thing, and whatever you're bringing into your current daily life. And if you're trying to plan your travels in the future, you want to add more travel into your life over the next few years, like Emily does, or whatever the case, just remember that if you're putting everything through that travel lens, make sure you have the right mindset and the right approach. So when you're adding these things into your daily life, just look at them in a way that they're not going to prevent you from traveling. I think that's good and healthy for people that want to travel, and it really opens up the mind in different ways to figure out how you can accommodate those things with the travel lifestyle you want to have. So I just wanted to highlight that and to just give Emily a quick shout out there, and congrats on not settling on that program and kind of going for your travel dreams. So right on. Okay. I will leave you with a James Joyce quote. First, a little challenge to send you off on your day if you're looking for one. That idea of chatting and daydreaming, that really stuck with me. We talked about that in the interview, the 2 Irish pastimes, according to Jack, daydreaming and chatting. And what a great way to spend the day. He mentioned just kind of spending a day like that on your travels without an agenda. And so that's a challenge I'm throwing out to you, whether you're home or on the road. Spend a day without an agenda, chatting and daydreaming. Doesn't that sound nice and relaxing? I'm going to find a day in my calendar, and I'm literally going to put down chatting and daydreaming as my tasks for the day. So go for it if you want to do the same. Doesn't that sound fun? Open up your calendar one day and you see, oh, all I have to do today is chat and daydream. Perfect. I can do that. Now I'm going to leave you with this powerful short quote from James Joyce, who said, "Mistakes are the portals of discovery." Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.